Yes, we are live now, Aniket. So, hey, welcome, Aniket, to our podcast series on everything B2B. This is Vamshi, partner at Kalari Capital. Um, we have been speaking to the leaders and builders who have built massive B2B commerce businesses in India, and also to help aspiring founders learn and take away insights from those who have seen the ecosystem shape up. Today with us we have Aniket, co-founder and COO of Bizongo. Welcome, Aniket.
Thank
Um,
you.
which is again, India's leading growth enablement platform for SMEs, offering enterprises and vendor businesses end-to-end digitization of their supply chains. Bizongo started in 2015 its journey by connecting buyers and sellers in the packaging industry to make trade more efficient. Seeing a larger problem at hand, several industries working with outdated supply chain. Bizongo shifted its focus on modernizing these workflows. So, it's a huge industry here, and obviously, it's good to understand from the founders and their journeys to learn, what are the opportunities, what are the pitfalls, of the industry and the entrepreneur journey, as well as learn about how to build a business. So, we'll start off with Aniket. I'll do the talking less, and I'll let you talk, Aniket. But welcome to the show, and first question always comes to my mind is that uh, you know when do you actually decide, coming from a professional career or from a college, that hey, what, I want to build something, right? How does it trigger, because that is a key critical thing, because everyone is like, sitting on the fences, or they try to do these two things, or they know that everyone wants to become an entrepreneur, right? So how do you start off how did you start off in thinking that hey, this is the right time, this is the right time to go and build something, right? So would love to hear your thoughts on how it happened.
Absolutely. So, Vamshi, first of all, I'm extremely thankful to you and Kalari Capital for having me on board today. I think in my journey as an entrepreneur, along with my fellow co-founders Ankit and Sachin, as we have built Bizongo over the course of the last 8 years in existence, and in those 8 years, I think I've met several individuals from Kalari, and it has been a wonderful journey interacting. And this is the first joint program that we are doing together in some sense. So it gives me a lot of pleasure being here. And to answer your question, Vamshi, actually, that's a great one. Actually, to be very honest with you, I was the most disconnected person from entrepreneurship during my college days. So I'm actually a chemical engineering graduate from IIT Bombay. And during my IIT Bombay days, Vamshi, very honestly, everyone around me, that entire bubble had been created, right? That entrepreneurship is the sexy thing to do, and just because the other person is doing it, I'll need to do it as well. And everyone was everyone was talking about how McKinsey and BCG and Bain is not the primary driving motivation factor anymore. It's going to be entrepreneurship. And at that point, I along with my co-founder Sachin, and me and Sachin go back to the year 2010, and again we are from the same department. And we used to discuss a lot, right, as to what are these levers, what is the core reason as to why people are talking about entrepreneurship so much. And much to our surprise, what we realize is that there is definitely a wave of entrepreneurship getting created by two things. One, a huge uh, penetration of the internet as a whole, which is really really creating a movement, and B2C e-commerce is a prime example. And if you remember, Vamshi, at that time in 2015, Flipkart was starting to become the poster boy of Indian e-commerce, or even the Indian startup fraternity as a whole. Amazon was closely behind, second in the race. Snapdeal was there, right? And at that point of time, it was Mr. Modi and his charisma through and through, showing how GST, Make in India, all of the digital and physical infrastructures would just fall in together, and something will happen. And I then chanced upon reading about Mr. Jeff Bezos's regret minimization framework, and realized that what would I tell myself in 2025, that I tried and failed, or I did not try and become a part of India's internet success story. And when I read about Mr. Bezos talks about how he moved out from private equity to build Amazon from his garage, and says that he wanted to really look at building internet in the US, and US is 300 million people, India is 1.4 billion people. And that math kind of kept building inside my head, and I was like, if I do not participate in this, I'll regret my entire life. So I think so these three factors, I would say: consumer e-commerce, our charismatic PM and his policies, and definitely the third being that I just told you, about the number of people and the opportunity, that the behemoth opportunity that it presents in front of us.
Great, definitely. It's not been a regretful journey for you for sure, because I think you guys have done really well within this space. Now, one of the things, once you decide that you want to go ahead and build something, now the other challenge comes with a lot of the founders is key, as you said, because the markets are opening up. There is so much opportunity. Commerce is coming in, digitization is happening, there's just immense opportunities in front of you. See, until you become an entrepreneur you don't see this, but once you decide that you have become an entrepreneur, suddenly you see that, boss, there's so many things you can solve for, right? Now how do you figure? And as I said, one is the easiest way is everyone wants to get into the sexy part of the business, which is consumer, the front end part, because it's easy to explain, easy to understand. You can always say to your parents or your family that this is what I'm doing, right? And they feel good about it. But just looking at all the opportunities and saying, hey, you know what, this is what we want to do, this is what it makes sense. How do you kind of get to that point? What was the just the thesis, but also your own story about how do you get to doing what you're doing, basically?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's actually a very well articulated question, Vamshi. So, in 2015, Vamshi, very honestly, I graduated in 2013 and spent a good 5 years in IIT Bombay, which I would say was probably the best period of my life in terms of learning, right? Because the people around you, everyone is just 10x better than what I was essentially, and I could just learn every day. And it was like the best opportunity of my life. And when I graduated, I knew that somehow this peer network would help me someday. So for me, it was always people first before idea, right? I just need to know by myself what is the time during which I would need to start up, because I would do it someday for sure, because I want to play a role in the Indian internet landscape. Which idea I don't know. I know which people I want with me in my journey, right? So that was primary motivating factor number one. And then, as I told you, the entire policy framework, government push towards GST, Make in India, that came into existence. And at that point, one thing dawned on me and Sachin at the same time, Vamshi, was that we are people who are very much driven by impact getting created on the ground, right? So while at that point of time, my grandmother was probably being able to order an iPhone on Flipkart, and the smile that was coming across her face was creating a lot of impact in her daily life. And similarly, we were wondering, and we were actually opening up this website called indiamart.com, and we were thinking about SMEs, small business owners. We went around the entire city of Bombay, went to Crawford Market, went to Bhiwandi, observed warehouses, went to a Flipkart warehouse also, observed how SMEs and manufacturers work in this country, importers, and then realized that the pain point is there. It's immense. And very, very interestingly, there is a demand for something. There is a demand for an Indian Alibaba, you know. And everyone, all of these small businesses we were talking to, they were saying that we feel so bad, China is so ahead of us in terms of manufacturing. I need to buy this calculator also from China because it's just 20%, 30%, 50% cheaper than what I get in India. Why can't we buy it always from India? Why can't Indian manufacturing get strong? So that entire concept of Indian manufacturing being ingrained in Indian SME was getting more and more resonated in our heads. And when me and Sachin discussed, we talked about this, and we realized that if my grandmother buying one iPhone once in 5 years is getting happy with an e-commerce experience, imagine an SME procuring his daily raw material, his weekly chemicals, and all of the industrial inputs which are needed for his functioning every week, every fortnight, every month, and technology helps there. What kind of an impact can we create? So it was a no brainer then for us that we do not want glamour, we do not want a very high amount of sexiness from the business. What we do want is to create on ground impact in the lives of 50, 55, and now probably 75 million SMEs in this country.
Great. So again, for everyone's knowledge, you are talking about packaging, right? So what comes to our home, how it is handled. So I think maybe you can just in brief explain what exactly you guys do on at Bizongo, right? Maybe we can just start with that. So
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
because just the back end supply chain, just the products that are available, I think is just vast. But where is your focus area? What exactly do you guys do?
Absolutely. So, in terms of focus areas, Vamshi, we've seen our own journey, right? And which is why, at the start of our conversation sometime back, Vamshi, we were talking about how the next generation of entrepreneurs that are now going to build for India 2040 actually needs to adopt B2B tech as one of the primary levers or areas of concentration for them. So, for them, I just want to say one thing, right? And that one core belief has been there since 2015. We read about Jack Ma. Me and Sachin, read about Jack Ma together and realized that the one core reason that company called Alibaba has been the behemoth success that it has been is because of their their innate need to be involved in the logistics supply chain and to be involved in the payments infrastructure, right? They have gotten their hands dirty. They have said that I will get into an escrow mechanism with the sellers. I will deliver the core emotion of trust, which is till date lacking in a B2B trade. I will deliver it cross border, and Chinese manufacturers will, like blow up the entire world. So that is what was there since 2015, Vamshi, that it cannot be a listing agency. It cannot be a very fancy, nice looking software where just people just come and look at beautiful pictures, because ultimately pictures do not give you trust. Your today, if you ask me, even on Big Basket, if you tell me that this is the best apple that I'll probably apple, I mean the fruit, not the computer, the best apple that I can get in the market, I will still ask you 10 times that are you sure this is the best apple. Pictures don't give you anything, so, and information is available at your fingertips on Google. What gives you prime power as a consumer or as an enterprise rather is actually logistics, payments, and the entire participation of that supply chain, right? And that is when we decided that no matter what, we want to become transaction first. We want to get our hands dirty. And we started off with packaging as a sector because that was very much, sort of a big industry growing at 16-70% CAGR, annually in 2050, which is growing even faster now. But with time now, Vamshi, since you asked me, what do we do now? With time, we realized that the importance of category has dwindled a bit, and it is more segment which is rather more important than category. And by segment I mean Bizongo works in all unbranded products, right? So if you think about it, at Bizongo we have divided the entire market into commodities, and within the non-commodities, raw materials, non-raw materials, essentially finished products, we have your finished branded products and finished unbranded products. And in the unbranded products, essentially, Vamshi, the value that the customer requires is very different. He needs reliability, he needs trust, he needs quality. And because there is no brand out there in the market, the margin is very, very, it's not just something that can be encapsulated in a study. It goes all over, and it completely depends on the capacity of the supplier that is being utilized. So we piggybacked on that, and as of this moment, Vamshi, we are essentially a supply chain optimization platform. And what I mean by that is we go to a customer, we ask the customer to get all his present sellers on our platform, all right, and we then tell him that your entire purchase order to payment cycle is going to be managed on the platform itself. The platform is going to be a repository of your supply chain. You can get a complete visibility, your procurement, your finance, the marking of receipt of goods, the payments of invoices, the generation of invoices, everything happens digitally. The generation EV bill, and you can track your entire supply chain. And through this, because Bizongo is one of a kind, a transaction first marketplace, we get the entire visibility of the transaction, and basis the transaction, we have a plethora of financial institutions which then end up funding the seller. And it's essentially a very, very beautiful double whammy of financing and supply chain optimization together.
Great. So, initial days, right? Obviously today it looks like, hey, yeah, it's a great opportunity. It sounds so simple that, yeah, this is the opportunity we want to go ahead. But finding the product market fit in this space, because it's just massive, right? How do you go about finding, okay, here is where I want to test this and say this is working, or this is not working, let me do something else. But initially when you start off, because like you said, it's a massive industry, so many SMEs out there and so many customers out there, how do you go about saying that, hey, what, how do I find the product market fit? One, from your own perspective. Second is from what you want to convince the investors with, right? So, two things. How do you actually kind of go about figuring that out?
No, excellent. Actually, Vamshi, this is a thought that has been ruminating in my mind since a long time. But I believe that the best entrepreneurs out there, and I'm talking about the best of the best, probably Mr. Bill Gates and people who we have admired across generations. I believe that the core, they're really good at two core things, right? One is balancing of top line and bottom line, and the other is building a moat around their business. And I'll just elaborate on both of them, right? So if you think about it, building a profitable business is not the most difficult part. Building a profitable business which inherently scales is the core competency that someone needs to really like understand. So I feel that all our decisions, Vamshi, at different points of time were related a lot to this point. At some point, when the market was heavily being funded and entrepreneurs were being given term sheets, we were understanding that the situation might not last forever. So we better build basics of the business upfront itself. And Vamshi, one point that you added at the start of the conversation is that B2B is not sexy in nature. So essentially, me and Sachin did have to put in a lot of efforts going to the investor boardrooms and saying that, hey, this is not hyperlocal commerce. This is something else. And it inherently makes money, but the technology is what is going to be the moat in the long run. Yes, we did not get an overwhelming response initially, but then as the traction get developing, and interestingly, Vamshi, if you do get a chance to meet more, I'll actually explain to you as to how our employee, or rather, number of employees, or you can say revenue per employee, is best in class. So at $1 billion of annualized turnover, we are 350 people, right? So you can understand that by the nature of the P&L, we are extremely light, we are asset light, we have no inventory, and the technology is the moat which drives the business, and the top line is ongoing, and so is the bottom line going, which then creates a lot of shareholder value. So I believe that Vamshi, see, investors get so many deals on their table, that it becomes very difficult for them to immediately say that, this is the entrepreneur and this is the company I want to back, and this is going to be the next Elon Musk. It is very easy to say, and it is 100 times more difficult to execute. So I just feel, Vamshi, that in certain cases, if someone is doing cutting edge AI work, it's very easy to decipher that it's going to be the next big thing. But other than that, in most companies, I think it's very important to understand the intricate depth of the founding team and their need and the want to balance top line and bottom line, and also create some sort of a unique differentiator or edge which will make the company great in the long term.
Absolutely. And I think this is the first time I'm hearing from someone who are actually measuring revenue per employee. I used to listen and hear about this mostly in US, basically to measure productivity, and they can actually say that this is the money the employee is making, right? So
Yeah,
it's very inspiring for the team also, and the people working also, to say that, yeah, I'm really contributing so much to the company, right? And I'm
correct.
able to kind of, otherwise people don't really connect much with what's happening versus what they are doing at work. So I think it's great to hear that. Just on that question, Aniket, how did you find your first product market fit? Where did you go? How did you sell? Who did you sell to?
No, excellent. Actually, initially, Vamshi, one secret sauce that we had is that always uh, me, Sachin, and Ankit, all three of us, and also our starting founding team, we were always obsessed about trying to validate the hypothesis that we have. So none of us are authoritative in nature. So we never go out on a whim and say, "Hey, let's do this because I'm saying so." That never used to happen. It did not happen in 2015. It doesn't happen now. So at that point, our hypothesis was that the market can be divided into, as I was saying, commodities, branded products, and unbranded products. And we thought that we will validate this hypothesis. So we went to the Crawford Market area and the Bhiwandi area in Bombay and talked to at least 500 to 700 businesses, understanding their pain points. We realized that commodities have lesser margins, but the SKU fragmentation is lower. On the branded products, it's the complete supply chain game. But on the unbranded products, the margins are also high, and you probably don't need to stock because it's made to order. So different categories have different nuances, and that is when we decided that, hey, let's try to create a transaction first platform which offers logistics and payment services, and make it end to end and start in both commodities and unbranded products. And by working on the initial few orders, etc., Vamshi were actually in the polymer category. I vaguely remember that. And the reason was that in the western part of our country, Gujarat, Maharashtra specifically, because of the Reliance monopoly, the polymer granules as a category is very, very prominent. And our initial few orders used to always be from those categories. But the margins there are razor thin. Even the large distributors end up making lesser than 0.5% of gross margin. So and then with time, and the other thing, Vamshi, I need to tell you that we have been very, very brave in terms of taking decisions. So just 3-4 months before our Series A fundraise, Sachin, me, and Ankit one day sat down and decided to just chuck out the complete polymer and chemicals category and just narrow in on packaging. Our revenue went down by 96%, and no investor at that point of time wanted to touch us. And we are so very grateful to the people and the investors who are on board today, and they believed in us when the things weren't right and they were not in our direction. But if we did not take that call, then Vamshi, we would still have been in a rat race, trying to prove out a top line supremacy, when today no one cares about top line anymore. It is all about a top line bottom line mix. So it's also about taking the brave decisions at the right point.
No, I think one of the key critical things for an entrepreneur is knowing when to pivot, right? Or pivot, or at least take the right calls, basically. And I think something like what you guys were talking about, just chucking the whole thing, which is showing a top line GMV, but you feel that is not the right business, but you found something more interesting to go about and start having that conviction deep to actually go and say, hey, you know what, we're going to focus on the fundamentals rather than actually saying, okay, what the market wants or what the investors want. Let me just go back. This is the chance I got. Let me just try to make the best out of it and do the right things, right? So I think that's very, very important. I feel from when I see entrepreneurs are able to raise capital, but are stuck in a loop that I have to just keep doing what I'm doing
Yes.
because this is the only thing I know, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they don't understand that they have capital in hand to pivot or look at different things if something is not working. So I think that's great to know that you guys were able to do. I have one question from Aditya Agarwal here. The question is, have you planned to foray into direct selling, which means basically becoming a vendor yourself for SMEs in some of the biggest categories? That's a question from
So
Aditya.
that's a Aditya, I must commend you on the nature of the question. It's essentially a great one. And when you say direct selling, I actually understand this as private labeling or white labeling. So Aditya, the fact of the matter is that the margin structures in our categories, which is the unbranded space, right? Right now, I'll give you a few examples. We are working with apparel, in apparel, textiles, yarn, fabric, etc. We are working with a lot of agricultural products like soya, maize, and mustard, and a lot of agricultural products. We are also working on packaging, and so on and so forth. The list keeps going on. More and more unbranded products. The thing is that, Aditya, you need to understand that in these segments, no one really cares who you're buying from as long as the quality is okay, right? So we work more towards making sure that there is past data on the platform which can give inference to the a buyer if he should continue buying from them or not, right? So at any given point of time, I'll give you an example, right? Today, I think this is a realization that came to us with a lot of effort. But today, I just wanted to tell you that buying from a particular supplier is not the concern. The concern is that the reliability of the supply gets dwindled with time. It goes up and down. The supplier also is very tired working with the same buyer, tries very hard to get his money out. So that relationship in itself is not very fruitful. So the need for a brand is not because that and the need for a brand rather, Aditya, only comes when there is a potential of margin to be made. That will create a brand, and we will make more margins. That in itself is not there in the unbranded segment. If you're buying from me, or you're buying from Vamshi, or you're buying from Tim Cook, you really don't care as long as your product quality is getting fulfilled. So essentially, that's the reason why we never went into branding or white labeling per se. But in a fragmented made to order category, that is not really something that we have seen work very well. But to increase margins, one interesting thing what we have noticed you can do is look at the production levels of factories, which are the suppliers. We have still not done it, but this is an interesting idea to look at. A lot of suppliers in made to order categories in India operate at 70, 60, 50% efficiency. So if you're reliably able to give a stream of demand to them, they'll be able to share their at the same fixed cost, they'll be able to share the extra margins they make with you.
Great. I have one other question from Sarthak. What did you do to get low procurement costs from suppliers in earlier days when demand volumes might be very low?
Absolutely. Thanks, Arthak. I think interesting. I think initial days, for example, if you recall, I was talking about the initial days being predominantly more and more driven towards raw materials and commodities. So in this case, we were doing a lot of polymer granules and like industrial commodity chemicals. And in those cases, in terms of procurement, we realized that there is, in some sense, we need to expend a bit of working capital to get a large cohort of demand, which can be safely placed with a few semi large distributors, because we had no access to the largest manufacturers. And then by giving that a certainty of demand, you are able to get good prices in the initial days. But as I was mentioning, that's a risky game to play, because in commodity markets the price fluctuations are also there, which can even like completely obliterate your initial gross margins you make. So my personal belief, Sarthak, is that in a marketplace, in a B2B marketplace, it is always wise to think from the day one, what is the segment you're after and what is the USP that you want to build.
Great. So one of the questions from my side, Ankit, is that, see, where I've seen a lot of companies initially starting up with two or three founders, right? So there's when you start up, there's excitement, but once you get on the journey, it gets very, very tough, right? The initial 2 3 years, and the founder dynamics become very, very important at that point in time, right? And that's where you start talking about your own culture before even you move into the team and the organization and all that. But just from your own founder dynamics, right? When you are three founders, what are the situations you have seen where you felt like, hey, you know what, this is very tough for us between three of us? And I've been in that journey, so I can understand, some challenges where you are sitting in the boardrooms screaming at each other, but you get out and you're just friends and you're able to talk normally and all that, right? So initial founder dynamics, I feel, are very core, and building that trust with each other is very core. How did you guys go about? One is, of course, we all say that we have a lot of history, but I've seen even friends with a lot of history having a lot of challenges to deal with when they see a different personality when you come to business, right? So what did you see as some of the problems, and how did you actually kind of make sure that that doesn't come in terms of the growth which you want to drive, or in terms of the vision you want to achieve?
Yeah. Vamshi, excellent. I fundamentally believe, and myself, I've also been I'm very at a nascent level, but I have started being an angel investor also in a few companies. And the first thing I notice is the founder team camaraderie, and I often end up realizing is that that is probably the factor least talked about, but that is probably the factor which is most important. All said and done, cannot stress any more on that. And honestly, I think in terms of challenges that we faced, Vamshi, I think when entrepreneurs are young, especially, I'm not saying that I'm very old though, but when entrepreneurs are really young, Vamshi, we are complex people. We are essentially always trying to say that, hey, we'll give up our own personal dreams, aspirations, and comfort because we want to build for the masses, because we want to create impact for the country. But then ultimately we are human beings, right? So our own selfish nature comes dawning and running behind us at the end of the day. So we are always conflicted. If we are building for the long term, if we are building for the short term, are we running after fame and money? What is it that we are after? And then because of that, there are always certain ups and downs that happen between relationships within co-founders, and I've often seen that. So one thing to be remembered, and something that served us also very well, we three, me, Sachin, and Ankit also very well, Vamshi, is that we have tremendous respect for each other's capabilities. You know, I fundamentally believe that I am a nobody without both of them, right? And I believe that in the deepest core of my heart, right? That if tomorrow I am asked to be running this business without both of them, I will miserably fail, and I take that to my grave. So this causes me to have tremendous confidence in their abilities. This causes me to believe that no matter what, I need those two figures in my life as a guiding person, not only in my professional life but also probably in my personal life. So the deepest regard, deepest respect is important, trusting each other's capabilities, and most importantly, Vamshi, when things go south, right? Because things will go south, no matter what. Even if you're doing extremely well, even if you're Sam Altman, you will have a Google breathing down your neck, right? So when things go south, when things plummet, when your revenues go down, do not mistrust each other. Never think that I am building for the country and the economy at large. My co-founder is building for his own personal wealth. Before making that accusation, think 10,000 times, right? Because that person is the same one who was by your side when you had a tough time. So always reciprocate that trust, always show that trust, never ever mistrust your co-founder, and trust and respect. It's a basic simple program for complicated people.
Another quick question from Prithviraj. How do you deal with the traditional business mindset which might have been prevalent when you started, and the resistance to use data and technologies, or the lack of trust in it? This comes back to one of the questions I also had, Aniket, on, it's easy to measure direct to consumer customer experience. There's ratings, there's reviews, there's all over the people writing things and all that, right? And we see, we feel it, we can understand what is happening. So I think it's a very relevant question. How do you actually bring these guys to that kind of place, right? And how do you, as a company, measure the customer experience from your own standpoint?
Absolutely. Thanks, Prithvi. Thanks for the question. I just wanted to say that, in our case, we very diligently measure something called CNPS and CSAT, which is customer satisfaction, and, also customer NPS, which is Net Promoter Score. And all of our numbers in the recent past 12 to 24 months have hovered in the plus 85 to plus 90 mark. We're very proud of that. But I think the reason behind that has been that, none of the elements of the order flow, right from placing the purchase order to the customer making payment to Bizongo, happens digitally on the interface. And the customer only and only calls or even interacts on an email with someone with a POC from Bizongo if there is a situation which is untoward, if there is an exception handling scenario. So what I mean to say that if you are focused as an entrepreneur in making the experience very seamless for the business customer also, he'll reward you for that, right? Commercially, maybe initially there'll be a hiccup, because I very honestly believe, Vamshi, that as of this age, as of this sort of the time span that we are in India, very very few business consumers are ready to pay for tech upfront without understanding the core value of it. But if you show them that with time, hey, this has helped you. So I'll give you a very very nice example, right? And this is probably something that is always at the tip of my tongue. Example is that, Vamshi, if you notice enterprise customers, right? They buy, they order, they give a purchase order. The consignment or the shipment comes to them. It comes to their warehouse. They take it in, from the truck. The truck is unloaded. The invoice is stamped, is signed by the person who receives it, and that becomes a proof of delivery. Then the transporter or the lorry driver takes it back to the supplier, where he came from, gives it to the supplier. The supplier sees it. takes a photograph, sends an email back to the customer, and says that, hey, this is the POD that I received from the transporter. We were really shocked to see the inefficiency in the supply chain. We did something very simple. We told the procurement person who places the purchase order on the Bizongo interface that you have to enter the shipment quantity and the shipment quality, and it is, if it is approved and according to your standards, enter it on the Bizongo website, and on the platform, and an electronic proof of delivery is going to be generated for you. So at that point of time, Vamshi, that electronic proof of delivery document works for the customer as well as for the seller, and basis that the seller can get his payment. See, and we got savings of over 25 man days, you know, through the removal of this inefficiency in the supply chain. So that just says that technology doesn't have to be generative predictive AI alone. Technology doesn't have to sound fancy. Technology needs to solve on the ground problems which are affecting daily, I mean, human beings normally, right? And if you do that, enterprises will value it.
So the other thing which is very important within the B2B business is the working capital, right? And how do you manage that, right? So, how does working capital work for you right now? What have you built to actually ensure that, able to manage this at scale, right? Because it cannot be the equity capital which keeps funding the business, right? So, just for people to understand how exactly you get to a negative working capital if possible. Of course, we don't start with that, but eventually the goal for everyone is to get to that point, and then so that you have more money in the business which you can actually invest in other things, and there's a path towards profitability, right? So how did it start? Where are you right now? How do you see it going?
Absolutely. Vamshi, in the starting days, it was a huge struggle. I'll tell you about a situation where, I can't name the person, but a banker from Kotak Mahindra Bank came to us, and I was such a novice, at that point of time. He came to me and told me that, hey, this is a term sheet for you for a sort of a CC overdraft limit. And it's for 10 crores, and you have to park 11 crores with us as FD. So it's essentially a 110% margin. I was actually happy because I thought that is a working capital loan that I've gotten from a good bank. And then sometime later when I realized the intricacies of it, and oh, by the way, there were promoter guarantees also involved within the same term sheet. Then I understood that we were dealing with a behemoth, and an industry that we don't understand at all, and it's better than that with time we realize and we learn and operate in a much better way. And honestly, from there to now, I will give you an example, a snapshot of where things are now, Avamshi. We operate with around 35 NBFCs and banks. It is complete off balance sheet debt. The collaterals that we give for the off balance sheet debt is around 8 to 9% only. It has significantly reduced from 110% to 8%. And equity capital usage is bare minimum. Like, I can count it on my fingertips. Most of it is off balance sheet debt given by these plethora of NBFCs and banks. Getting it started requires a lot of initial selling, where that barrier needs to be broken. The financial institutions is a very close group community, Vamshi. Kotak knows HDFC, HDFC knows ICICI, everyone knows each other. All their credit teams know each other. They know the venture debt guys. The venture debt knows the all the private equity investors. All the private equity investors know all the NBFCs. If there is a negative word that gets spread about the company, that the company is not is weak on corporate governance, or is weak on certain basic metrics, etc., no one will come ahead and put their term sheet to the business. But initially, if there are deals like what I told about the 110% margin from Kotak Bank, if there are deals you like that you get, don't be surprised. It's a start, right? It's better than nothing, right? So I think every entrepreneur needs to go to their holy grail, Vamshi. We did our share. We went through a lot of these cycles of working with the largest banks and NBFCs, kept on negotiating. So that continuous perseverance needs to come in. Also, very, very importantly, our finance team is the best in class, honestly, and we have a few of the best people in the market with us. And they continuously build very, very good rapport and relationships with these banks and NBFCs to be able to generate off balance sheet debt for us, which then serves as working capital financing for the for the sellers. The platform, which is the Bizongo platform, is utilized as a plethora of data based on which they can take decisions.
Great. Just coming back to people and organizations, because at every level the organization is different. When you initially start, everyone in the organization. I'm sure at the scale where you are today, it's very tough to do that, right? So, but how do you ensure that? I think I was listening or reading somewhere about you guys, where it's a you have this feedback loop coming in. There's a collaborative environment, and it's more constructive in terms of taking ideas and actually being able to support those ideas within the organization. I think would love to understand during different phases of journey of growth itself, how this changes and how the equation changes to keep that going, right? Because that's a very critical part for you to grow.
Right. No, in terms of culture, I would be very honest with you, Vamshi. There was one fine day when we had just started up, right? I think I was again a novice. I went to this auditorium in IIT Bombay to listen to Mr. Travis Kalanick talk about Uber and Uber's growth. And I remember in that conversation, he ended up saying that culture is something that you think about only after you go to 1,000+ employees, and then Uber imploded. So I'm not concluding anything, but all I'm saying is that from day one you need to think about culture. If you don't, people do not have the wherewithal, the patience, the time to work with you as a team member. You know, time life is too short to be working with people you don't like. This is my simple policy. So I fundamentally believe that at our company, Vamshi, we know from a subject matter expertise very little, and that's okay, because it is always important to work with people having complementary skill sets who fulfill the entire requirement of the company, have an enormous amount of basic trust with each other, always believe that no one within the company wants to harm the company, no matter what. That is the last thing that they want to do, and they will never do it deliberately. And then always have the ability to challenge each other, yet not feeling that the other person is rude. you know that is also, I think, a fine balance that we have taken a lot of time to adjust to, Vamshi, where we realize that in many cases when someone comes and challenges us, like we feel that how is that person telling us anything? I know about this subject much better than him. Who is he to tell me? And that is when ego kicks in. And that is where we always believe at Bizongo that there are 2, 3, 5, 5, 7 hypotheses, and there is either we give data to support that hypothesis, or we say that we are all agreeing as a group to follow it, and then we'll see what happens. Never have dissonance in opinions and not displaying it in person in a group. So that breaks trust. So these are a few basic things that came to my mind.
And obviously, one of the key aspects is for an entrepreneur founder is the ability to raise capital. Right, you're juggling with so many things. One is you're building businesses, but you need to raise capital. You need to build teams. You need to focus on profitability. All these things, but the important aspects is to actually raise capital at the right time, because that actually will fuel the growth of the business and the company. Right, so obviously everyone keeps thinking that do I have that ability innately, or do I build as I go? Right, do I learn from the market? Do I just start learning and building on what are the things investors are looking at? And obviously there is a flywheel effect to that eventually, right? But how was your journey in terms of convincing investors? Initially it's a tough thing, like you said, but what are the key things you learned from some of those conversations which helped you kind of put you in the right direction? And from your own perspective, how important is a founder's ability to raise capital as a key ingredient of entrepreneurship?
I feel, Vamshi, it's a substantially important element, and something which actually falls directly within the paradigm of founder responsibility. Because honestly, investors know for a fact that the DNA of the company. See, I'm not talking about executive decision making, but the DNA of the company are built by the group of founders largely. So they are always and always looking out for the best group of founders together, because they know that if I'm backing the DNA of the company today, I'm going to be reaping benefits 10 years later, and I have to show return to my own fund. So I might as well look at the founder camaraderie and the ability of the founder to raise capital from other investors, right? So I think ultimately, very honestly, Vamshi, it took us time to realize this. Initially, we thought that we are being able to understand the benefits of the B2B category. Why is our story not getting relayed to the other side? Why aren't we being appreciated enough? A lot of such thoughts used to come into our head. And Vamshi, very honestly, we realized that whatever might happen, we need to stick to our guns, because we believe that the basics of the business are good. The tech is usable, the tech is convenient, and we are able to generate top line and bottom line both. And someday the investors will be able to value that and see value in that, rather. Right? And in our journey of raising capital, Vamshi, we met outstanding people who gave us massive feedback, and ability to, they had a lot of ability for us to change the business also. And very honestly, Vamshi, the ability of a founder to raise capital, I think is uh, that would be slightly generic to say. A more sort of a specific way to say it would be to kind of storytell. How is the storytelling ability of the group of founders? Do the founders know their business well? If a founder knows their business well, even if they don't understand a word of English, I feel it doesn't matter. Because that person can walk into the room and say that, hey gentlemen, hey ladies and gentlemen, this is the business model I have, this is why it generates money, and this is why the technology is usable, this is why it will become a big market or a big company in the long run, right? The investor is not there sitting thinking that the founder must come walking in a very expensive suit and with a briefcase in hand, look very smart. No, those are not tenets that are important at all. The founder needs to have an ability to storytell and say why the business is going to become fundamentally strong and a big business someday, which I feel naturally, if the founder is the group of founders are strong in business building, they will get to someday automatically, even if they are not good at first.
So Abhishek has a question on a lighter note, saying that before you got the check, first check, how many investors have you approached, and how many rejections did you get?
So Abhishek, that's a great question actually. I honestly feel that we did end up going to a lot of investors to initially. I'll be very honest, Abhishek. The initial journey of the seed Series A capital fundraise was more difficult, and the reason being, whenever Abhishek, we as an entrepreneur or a group of founders, we are going against the tide and trying to do something which at that time is not what the market forces are walking towards. It is automatically going to be a bit difficult, right? But if the basics are again and again harped, if the entrepreneur is very confident about what he or she is building, and there is enough camaraderie and chemistry that is seen in the group of founders, then it becomes because see, as I mentioned at the start, the community is very closely knit. It's thousand times more closely knit than me or you know it is. Everyone talks to each other. If tomorrow you launch a company, Abhishek, and you become a founder and you decide to do something, and if you meet 10 people, then trust me, 110 people already know in the investor finance community. So it is, the word spreads very fast. If you are building something meaningful and worthwhile, it will get through to people. If in terms of rejections, I think during the Series A we had the toughest time, because we had to let go of 96% of our revenue. We thought we will have to shut down because there's no way we'll be able to raise any capital. But thankfully, the team at Chirata Ventures could see through that we were building something meaningful, and they supported us at the right point of time.
Great. So, last couple of questions. One is, how do you see, the opportunities within this space for people who are building up now, right? See, one is you are solving one of the problems, but uh, what are the opportunities where you think people who are trying to start up now on the B2B side can actually look at and say, build for those? I think it'll be great for folks to understand some of these things.
Absolutely. So Vamshi, I actually feel B2B SaaS is extremely good. It's evergreen, and the importance of it is actually going up and up and up. So I'll tell you the reason I say this, because when we were starting up, B2C e-commerce was the thing in our mind, and it used to make us feel that because the technology penetration in the Indian consumer ecosystem is getting so high now, they will likely use our platform also. And the bet was right. It ended up becoming a right hunch. But now with piggybacking on, off business, Moglix, Bizongo, infra market, usage of technology in Indian enterprises, also the big shots like SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, they're obviously there. They're much bigger than us. So they've already solved a lot of the puzzles. Now the next thing is to work on specialized problem statements using tech. So I fundamentally believe B2B SaaS, B2B tech is very interesting, and could be solving a part of the problem. Like, I essentially, there is a part of the Bizongo, company itself. There is a SaaS solution called Artwork Flow that we sell, wherein Artwork Flow is a label management platform for packaging that printers and enterprises also use, and to manage their workflow. And this is a specialized problem that we have started to solve, and in no time we were able to go to around, we are almost touching $1 billion SaaS revenue very soon. So I think that, and within the, as a part of the Bizongo fraternity, and we already have multiple customers in the US, in the Middle East, Australia, Europe, so on and so forth. So I feel that B2B SaaS, if you ask me, is going to be big if the person or the group of founders can identify a problem statement. Since technology penetration, internet is not the problem anymore. People can mint money like anything in terms of top line and bottom line both.
I think that's a very positive note, Aniket. Um, of course, we talk business and all that, but I saw your DP and I saw Kishore Kumar over there. So I was just wondering, is that the way you de-stress? And if so, what are your other things which you do apart from business? And do you sing? And what is your like favorite song, from
Yeah,
Kishore?
yeah.
You know?
Thank you for spotting that, Vamshi. That's so thoughtful of you. So actually, Vamshi, from a de-stressing perspective, there are a few things which I like a lot, right? So very picky about things that I like. So yeah, I'm a huge music fan. So I almost go up worshipping Kishore Kumar as an artist since my childhood, and it has been a part of my spiritual journey, you can say. And I can call it that, because my spiritual journey has encompassed his music. And also I'm a big fan of, I am a big fan, and essentially ended up in tears when Lataji passed away on 6th Feb. So and these people are the reason why I'm here standing, because in my moments when I was down and out, these pieces of music gave me inspiration to survive and get through my day. So yes, music is definitely number one, and it is a very different special feeling for me. Outside that, I do drink loads of coffee. I love to frequent cafes, and traveling was definitely something that I used to do a lot before. But now there is a so many company responsibilities, and my co-founder Sachin is quite strict as a person and doesn't really allow me to take a lot of holidays. So yeah, I mean, if you ask me about my core passions apart from work, these would be the it. And obviously, last but not the least, like to spend a lot of time with family, including parents, friends, and my wife as
Any favorite song you can maybe hum for us quickly? So
well.
many beautiful melodies.
Oh my god. Okay, I can try a line. छू कर मेरे मन को किया तूने क्या इशारा, बदला ये मौसम, लगे प्यारा जग सारा, छू कर मेरे मन को किया तूने क्या इशारा.
Wow, that was really amazing,
Thank,
Aniket.
thank you,
Um,
thank you.
I think you should definitely try your this thing at singing. That's just really beautiful. I think it's really nice. But
Thank you so much, Vamshi.
thank you so much, Aniket. This has been very helpful. I hope the audience here will learn a lot, and will be able to take this and build larger companies in the B2B space, because that is what we are looking. And thank you and appreciate you taking the time for us, Aniket.
Thank you, Vamshi. Thanks a lot for inviting me for this chat. It was an amazing experience, and the variety of questions was just, and no one would actually will be actually believe that this was impromptu, right? So I mean, it was just like so varied and such diverse questions. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you so much, Aniket. All the very best. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for patiently listening to us. Thank you.
Good night.